I want to tell you something about a place that is positive. Pure, P-U-R-E, pure and positive, and it's Crazy Horse. I went there about, I guess, 15 years ago. I was doing a show. I'm an actor, and I was doing Will Rogers, a one-man show of Will Rogers in Rapid City, right near Crazy Horse in South Dakota. And one of the Zielkowski children came down to see the show and said, "Why don't you come up and see what we're doing up there?" And I'd heard a little bit about it. It had never been publicized enough, in my view, and I'm thinking the view of everybody, because a lot of people didn't know about it. I didn't know that much about it. I went up and visited. I spent a day up there. And when I saw this immense family working, all of them, in concert, to create something that had been a dream of their father and of her husband, her being a wonderful gal, one of the most intelligent, strongest, courageous women I've ever known, a very beautiful woman, spiritually and physically. Her name Ruth Zielkowski. Korczak Zielkowski was the Polish immigrant, and he had no reason on earth that anybody could figure out for tying in with an Indian, an American Indian. And the Lakota Sioux wanted to have a memorial to them. Right next door, very in the same general area in the Dakotas, was Mount Rushmore, where we had seen to it that we honored some of our great presidents, Lincoln and Jefferson and Teddy Roosevelt. And it seemed ironic to me that here now were the Indians saying, wait a minute, we had some good folks too. And of course, we all admit, I hope we admit, because that's a sign of a healthy country, when you can admit your mistakes. And we made a terrible mistake in terms of taking this continent away from the American Indians. Will Rogers, mentioning him in passing, he said once, he's an Indian, Will was, and he said one time, I can never understand why people are so proud of their ancestors landed on Plymouth Rock. He said, my folks met the boat. And of course they did. This was their land, and we took it away from them. And I don't think we've ever adequately apologized to them. I'm not sure that the apology really matters much, but at least you can say we made a mistake. And that's a very healthy thing to do. Anyway, I went up and I saw this project up there, and they were carving a mountain. And that, of course, right away, when you say the Lakota Sioux Indian chief who said, I'd like to do a memorial, I'm sure Korczak, or they both thought, well, maybe we'll have a statue. He was a good sculptor, this man, Zielkowski. This was in 1948, right after World War II. And he had been a prize-winning sculptor. And he said, well, what do we do? What do we do? And he was a man with big vision. He was a man with big open eyes when he looked at the world. Had to be. He was orphaned. And then he happened to have a God-given talent. He was a great sculptor. And he won some prizes. And that's when the Indians, who had no money at all, said, this man's a very good sculptor, and maybe he's not well known enough to demand a lot of money, so we haven't got any money. We got a little wampum, but that's about it. And we asked him to come and make the memorial for us. Well, Zielkowski looked at a mountain as they were standing there. He said, why don't we carve the mountain? And I'm sure that the Indian laughed and said, that is a funny idea. And Zielkowski said, I'm not kidding. Let's carve that mountain in the form of a crazy horse, a statue. Perhaps he didn't say crazy horse because he didn't know the Indian lingo that much, but then standing there, the chief probably said, yeah, that's a good idea. How about one of our great warriors, namely Crazy Horse? And anyway, that's how it came to be. And Zielkowski, of course, lived in a tent. He had a couple of $100 in his jeans, and then he built over 70 steps all the way up to the top of the mountain. He took up an old jackhammer, and he had an old generator named Buddha, because it constantly went out on him. And he would have to trek up and down these 70 steps every time the thing went out, and so on and so forth. And he began to jackhammer a mountain. And that's how it began. And then, of course, some people gravitated to him. In fact, at one point, the government wanted to help him out. He said, no, 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 I don't want any politicians involved in this. This is going to be a pure function here. But it's really thrilling, honestly, what these people have done. It's rare that you find this kind of dedication to a dream that is really outsized, very strange, a little dream beyond most people's comprehension. Let's carve a mountain. Wow. And they all pitched in and began to fashion this mountain into, of course, a wonderful thing. And here's, of course, we all know this. I'm doing this for people who understand it. That's what it's going to be eventually. And after 60 years, this is how far they've gotten. This, and then, of course, they're beyond that. But this head can contain all 4 heads of Mount Rushmore. Gives you some idea of the immensity of this dream and this work that this family has been accomplishing. So I suppose the reason I'm talking to you now is to tell you that this inspired me, because it's rare, very rare. There's a lot of good going on in our country and a lot of good going on in the world, and people that are working every day to try and do something that doesn't have anything to do with their own aggrandizement or money. And this is one of them. I think the most closest perhaps to what our country would want to be, to acknowledge that we did a very terrible, we did 405 treaties with the Indians, with the American Indians, and we cheated on them all. Some of them just turned away from them and said we never did it. So anyway, this to me is an inspiring project in South Dakota, and anybody who hasn't seen it that I'm talking to now, please call. I'll give you a phone number. Call. Just call at 605-673-4681. You know, just give them a call and find out. I don't want money. We're not after your vote. But if you haven't ever had the opportunity to be inspired by something that is this strong and this pure, then please avail yourself of it, because we need, right now, we need inspiration to push us to our better selves, because we have them. We've had them in the past. We've had to push. And this is a great push that's been going on in South Dakota. And I recommend it to anybody who thinks that possibly life can be a really positive and powerful experience, because that's what's happening in the foothills of South Dakota. That's about all. Thanks a lot.